Welcome to another episode of We Don't Die, where my goal is to give you evidence that although our bodies will disappear, we survive physical death. When we aren't afraid of death, we are less afraid of life. From these episodes, my goal is for all of us to take more risks, go after our dreams, have great, fulfilling relationships, and perhaps a lot of fun in the process. I'm your host, Sandra Champlain, author of the international bestseller, We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. And today on We Don't Die Radio, I have Jeffrey Olsen. Jeff is a best-selling author and inspires audiences across the country with his intriguing personal story of perseverance and inner strength. In 1997, Jeff experienced a horrific automobile accident, which inflicted multiple life-threatening injuries, including crushing both of his legs. His left leg was amputated above the knee. The most devastating outcome of the accident was the loss of his wife and his youngest son, who were both killed instantly. At that time, Jeff had profound experiences which deepened his spirituality and gave him insights and gifts not common in today's world. He found the courage to carry on, to heal, and to care for his living son, and eventually thrive in his career and community contributions. Jeff has since remarried and adopted two boys. Jeff is the author of I Knew Their Hearts, the amazing true story of Jeff Olsen's journey beyond the veil to learn the silent language of the heart, and Beyond Mile Marker 80, Choosing Joy After Tragic Loss. Jeff also has an audio CD, which I'm anxious to listen to, called At One, Personal Insights from a Journey Beyond the Veil. Jeff Olsen's mission is to assist people in consciously embracing who they are and the connection they share with others and the universe. So that's why he's the perfect guest on our show today. Hello, Jeff. Welcome to We Don't Die Radio.
Hello, Sandra. How are you?
I'm great. I'm absolutely great and tickled pink that you're here. Um,
Oh, thank you.
I had mentioned this before we started, but at the end of many of my shows, after we stopped recording, I asked the guests, who do you think I should have on? Jeffrey Olsen was almost unanimous. So here you are. So
Yeah,
thank
and
you.
it's a pleasure.
Yeah, and you're in Utah right now, correct?
I'm in Utah. Yeah, I'm in the Rocky Mountains of Utah.
Oh, how beautiful. And what's your day job? I didn't read that because I didn't understand it.
What I do in my day job is I work in advertising. I'm a creative director at uh, at a regional and national advertising agency known as Thomas Arts,
Hmm.
and at an executive level, I oversee all the creative content, creative development, everything from television spots to websites and banners. But we have offices in New York, Washington, D.C., in Minneapolis, in Dallas, in Salt Lake City, and then also near Los Angeles. So it's a demanding day job, but I love it. I love what I do.
Yeah, an award-winning business too, from some of the things
Yeah,
yes, I see here. So you're an extraordinary man. Well, let's cut right to the chase, and why don't you tell us your story, and if you don't mind, why you believe we don't die?
I would love to. And it starts, way back. I mean, I'm going to give
Hmm.
you a little history on myself just so you realize I'm a very ordinary person, really. I mean, I grew up in a small town in Utah.
Hmm.
My mother and father divorced when I was young, and that caused some insecurities in me.
Oh,
I was only
yeah.
4 years old,
Wow.
and I mean, so everything I thought was, true and right and forever, and it just wasn't. Mom and dad split up, and they were very kind. I mean, they it was not an ugly divorce. They were very supportive. I shared time and had joint custody, and it was the best of a situation,
Hmm.
and yet it did cause some things in me that caused insecurities, and yet my mechanism to deal with that was to overachieve. Actually, I mean, my mother being a single mom and going to work and having three boys, I had two brothers. I was smack dab in the middle, and we were very, very close. I mean, My older brother was like 3 years older than me. My younger brother was only a year younger. So in 4 years, it was 3 boys, and it was quite a,
Oh, what a
it was
handful.
quite a little group. And so my mother put us in sports, athletics
Hmm.
to, number one, because we loved it, but number two, I think it was a great babysitter. While she could go to work, we would go to our sport games after school,
Right.
and then she could finish up and be there by the time practice was over. My father had a farm and a ranch, a dairy farm up in a little town called Charleston, Utah, which is probably the prettiest place on earth.
Oh, nice.
Tucked in right near Sundance on a lake and looking at Mount Timpanogos, and
Hmm.
a beautiful place. And we spent weekends with my dad, and we're very close to the farm. And between athletics and the farm, it kept us pretty much out of trouble, but we were rough and tumble kids. I mean, a lot of mischief, and my
Uh-huh.
brothers and I became best friends, and
Sure.
we eventually moved onto the farm full time. I mean, my mother remarried a wonderful guy,
Uh-huh.
very close to my stepfather, and anyway, but in that process, he had 5 kids, and my older brother, who had been the man of the house, even at the young age of 8,
Yes.
by the time we were in our teens, he was a sophomore in high school when this all happened. But we ended up moving full time with my dad on the farm, and just had a wonderful life up there. Because of the athletic history and all that was going on, I ended up getting a football scholarship. I played Division I football at Utah State. Go Aggies! And
Uh-huh.
went to college and loved that. I mean, my younger brother joined me, and I was studying art. I'd always had an artistic notion. I mean, I drew, I sketched, I painted, and although my first inclination was to be a fine artist, I found juggling fine art and a football scholarship, there was just not enough hours in a day. I mean,
Right.
literally, I would, between my obligations to the scholarship and practice and, team dinner and films and then weight room and, all that went on that way, um, I wouldn't get to paint till like 10 o'clock at night, and I would paint until midnight, 1 o'clock, and drop, and then have to be back up at 6 to be in the weight room,
Oh my
and
gosh.
it,
Yeah,
yeah, it
that's
was it was a lot.
a little too much. Yes.
Little bit overwhelming, but I found a niche in graphic design and in advertising design, and in coming up with ideas and quick sketches, which were a little more fluid and flowing and quicker time frames than creating a painting, but aside from all that, the most important thing I did in college um, was I fell madly head over heels in love.
Hmm.
And it was an interesting experience because I was a young man. I was 21 years old. And this young lady walked into the room, and it absolutely overwhelmed me. I didn't know her. I'd never met her. I did not know her name. And yet when she came in, it absolutely hit me, just flooded me with, wow, there's your wife. Now, I've heard of love at first sight, and I believe in that, but this was something much deeper. It was almost like a remembering of, oh my goodness, and it frightened me as a young man. What do I do with that?
Yeah,
It
sure.
it, it was that inner knowing. I call it the voice that speaks to the heart. And from there, that turned into a dating relationship, which turned into a courtship, and
Mm-hmm.
in the matter of a couple years, we were husband and wife, and giddy, happy, blissfully, joyfully taking on life. She had graduated and was a school teacher. She was teaching high school. I pursued a career in advertising and was, taking on my first jobs and doing exciting things. I was launching the Intel Inside campaign and doing
Wow.
big things in that realm.
Right.
But in the process of that, we had a child, Spencer, my first son, and he came into the world in a beautiful way, and he was just a great kid. I mean, he was an easy baby. He slept through the night, and was really a joy in our life. And we thought, gosh, this is pretty good. Let's have more. And so
Sure.
we embarked on number 2, which was quite a process. My wife, whose name was Tamara,
Mm-hmm.
she she'd had some complications in the pregnancy. It had caused some endometriosis and things like that. And without going into all the details, getting pregnant again was not a simple or easy
Mm-hmm.
possibility.
Right.
But in the process of a 6-year time frame, we finally got number two, and Griffin, my youngest son, came into the world, and he was, as much as Spencer was an easy baby, Griffin was a handful. He was
Oh,
crying all night. He was into everything and would keep me up, and
sure.
yet it was, he was a joy too, but boy, he was as full of mischief as I was. I
Yes,
mean,
yes.
my wife used to laugh and say, Spencer's a really good mix of both of us, but boy, Griffin is a mini you. I mean, he just, he just, um, you know, he if he wasn't looking for trouble, it was looking for him,
Right.
and that's kind of the way it went. But we had this beautiful little family,
Yes.
and
Sounds like the
by
perfect family and the perfect job, and she had her job teaching, and yeah,
yeah, life was
life was
going really
good.
well. And it wasn't without its
Of
challenges, and
course, because we're human.
and things are, everything was quite normal. But I knew I was very lucky. We knew we were very lucky, and by this time Spencer was 7, and Griffin was 14 months old. He was toddling about, and it was coming up on Easter time. And Tamara wanted to go to southern Utah, which is beautiful, the red rocks and rock formations and
Oh yeah, gorgeous.
everything you see about Utah. We were going to go down there and visit her parents and her grandparents. Her father had gotten Alzheimer's disease, and he was fading fast. And it was
Hmm.
kind of that phone call from her folks that said, "Hey, you may want to come down. Grandpa's not doing well, and we don't know, how long he may be here." We kind of knew it may be our last visit to see him.
Right.
But we packed up the car on an Easter weekend, left Friday night, drove down to St. George, which was about 4.5 hours away from where we live. And we had a beautiful visit with Grandpa. Even with the Alzheimer's, he had a great day. He remembered us. He remembered the grandkids. We had this
That's
lovely
nice.
visit with him. And her folks had actually gotten a condominium nearby to look after him, to be there with him. And so we went to their condominium to stay. They had extra bedrooms. We just had a wonderful time. Dyed the Easter eggs, created little baskets for the kids.
All the typical fun Easter
All the
stuff.
typical stuff. Yeah, it was just a beautiful family outing.
Hmm.
And I recall being up late, Saturday night, and I hid the baskets up in the trees because, Spencer by that time, I didn't want him to find them easy, so I thought,
Right.
well, I'm going to make it a bit of a challenge for him. And,
That's
of
funny.
course, Easter morning came, and the kids were up, and Griffin, my little toddler, was, he was wandering about the yard finding the colored eggs and calling them balls. He was just toddling about, and it's an interest, he was falling down and trying to learn to walk and leaning on things and getting around, but he was finding these eggs, and they were balls, and he would bring me the ball. Here's the ball. And,
Cute.
of course, Spencer was running, found the baskets in the trees, and he was ecstatic with all that. But just it was a beautiful weekend.
Hmm.
And Sunday night rolled around, and, gosh, we decided we wouldn't go home. We'd stay Monday. I would call the guys at work and let them know I would be late. And anyway, Monday rolled around, and we had breakfast, and it was just, it was one of those perfect little weekends. And we finally, got everybody in the car. I mean, I finally said, look, I really got to get back. And, we hugged, we said goodbye, we put everyone in the car, I buckled everybody up. And just as I was putting the car in drive to pull away, Tamara, my wife, said, wait a minute, hold on a second. I just want to say goodbye to Mom and Dad one more time. Now, at that point, I'm thinking, women, we hugged,
We
we
just
said
did
goodbye.
that. Yes.
Do we really need to do this? But the reason I bring this up is never ignore those whispers. Given the events of that day, which I will cover shortly,
Hmm.
she said, I just want to go say goodbye to Mom and Dad one more time. And I watched as she unbuckled, and she ran up to the porch. And, of course, there's Grandma and Grandpa, waving. And she hugged and kissed her mom and dad. Now, that wasn't uncommon, but she would typically hug them. But I watched and noticed as she actually hugged them and kissed them. And then she ran back and hopped in the car, and we were ready to go. Now, I was all about getting back to work. I was going to be a
Yes.
day behind. There was a million things going on, and I put the car in drive, and away we went up I-15. You know, I set the cruise control on 75, which is as fast as I could legally go, and
Right.
and I was all about getting back, and all that chatter in my head about, okay, you got this thing to do, you got to call that guy, you better arrange this, and you get that to-do list,
Oh,
running through your
always.
head, and
Always.
yeah, it's life. So I'm racing up the highway, making the best time that I can, listening to all that chatter, and I happened to just look in the rearview mirror. And when I did, I saw Griffin, my toddler, in his car seat, and he had fallen sound asleep. But for whatever reason, I felt him. I thought, wow, look at him, and I had this overwhelming sense of his essence. I mean, I noticed things like how long his eyelashes were, and how his hands kind of sat, resting on the car seats
Mhm.
in front of him there as he slept. And I thought, what a joy, what an absolute gift to have him in our lives. And then I glanced behind me where Spencer was sitting, my 7-year-old, and he was playing with the Star Wars toys he had gotten in his Easter basket,
Yeah, of
and
course.
was having the grandest lightsaber battle of the universe, and all the sound effects, and I felt him, and I thought, what a beautiful, beautiful child. I mean, he was easy as a baby. He's been easy as a boy, and I thought, what a blessing. I mean, what an absolute joy. And then I noticed my wife, who had actually reclined her seat, and she had fallen sound asleep, except she was still holding onto my right hand.
Mm,
She was
sweet.
holding my right hand. I was driving with the left. And I felt her. And I thought, what did I ever do to deserve her? I mean, she'd been such a light in my life. I mean, she'd come to me in such a profound way and had always just been this anchor. And not only did she wrangle the boys, she had wrangled me, and she wrangled her career, and she was just one of those outstanding people. I read something once that said something to the effect of, she stood there doing nothing except holding the entire universe together. And and I thought,
That's a great thing.
yeah, but I felt her,
Yes.
and I just thought, what did I ever do to deserve her in my life? What a gift. And I guess what I'm getting at, it was this profound moment of gratitude, a sacred moment of gratitude of, like, look how lucky I am. Look what's come into my life, and all that beauty and that intense gratitude. Of course, my attention went back to the road, and we
Yes, of course.
continued up the highway. Now, about an hour after that, and I don't know for sure what happened. There was reports of heavy crosswinds, over 110 miles an hour. There
Wow.
was reports of a red pickup truck that had been driving erratically and cutting people off. Um, the hardest part about the story is I literally feel like I may have dozed off at the wheel. I think I may have just, when you just nod
Yeah,
off,
sure.
and at any way I veered to the right. I overcorrected to the left, and at that point the car began to roll, not off the road, but down the road at
Mhm.
75 miles an hour. It was a horrific accident. The police reports estimate the car probably rolled no less than 7 or 8 times, and I blacked out for most of that. But when the car came to a stop and I was fully conscious of what had happened, the first thing I heard was my 7-year-old crying in the back seat. Now that was a relief to me. He was hurt, but he was crying. He was okay,
Right.
and I wanted to get to him. I thought I've got to get to him, and I went to move, but that's when I couldn't move. I could not move. Now I was pinned either to the seat or the floorboard. I could not tell. Um, I was not aware of it at the time, but both of my legs were crushed and shattered. The left one was eventually amputated above the knee.
Wow.
My back had been broken. My rib cage was crushed, and my lungs were collapsing.
Oh my goodness.
My right arm had been nearly torn off. There was no muscles to the rotator cuff or anything holding it in there, and then it had been lacerated very severely underneath it. Um, the seatbelt had cut through my midsection and had ruptured all my intestines. It had cut through my hip.
Oh my
It had
gosh.
actually, it had exposed my femoral artery, but
Mm.
by some miracle didn't sever it. Even though my two vertebrae were broken, the spinal column was not damaged. But at this point, I literally couldn't move. I couldn't see. I knew that my breathing, I couldn't breathe. But I wanted to get to my son.
Of
I wanted to get
course.
to my son who was crying. And that's when the brutal reality hit me that no one else was crying. I couldn't hear
Right.
the baby. And that's when I realized that not only was the baby gone, but Tamara was gone. I knew in that moment that they had been killed instantly in the accident. It was beyond devastating. There are no
Oh,
words.
there. It,
It's the worst hell a man could ever be in. I've got a crying child. I can't move. Half the
right.
family's gone, and I was driving the car. And the guilt and the regret. And in fact, I was losing consciousness. I was losing my breath, and I was barely able to speak. And the last thing I recall saying to Spencer, my son in the back seat, who was hysterical,
Mm-hmm.
um, I said, "It's going to be okay." And yet I thought, great, my last words to my son are a lie because it's not okay. Um, it just wasn't okay.
But
And
that's
in
the
that,
dad in you. That is the
yeah,
dad in you.
yeah, and in that absolute mayhem, the strangest thing happened. I began to have a sense of calmness. It was strange. It was almost as if I just felt light around me. I almost felt as if I just raised above the scene of the
Mm-hmm.
accident. Now, I had read about tunnels of light and things like that, but this was
Sure.
as simple as stepping from one room to the next. It was almost like I just stepped into a different realm. But I felt that rising sensation. I felt this calmness and comfort in the absolute horror of what had taken place. And I seemed to be surrounded by a bubble of light. That's the only way to explain it. It's as if I was being held in a bubble of light, and in that light was a tangible peace. There was a comfort. There was a love, an unconditional love, and
Mm-hmm.
I began to realize, am I okay? I'm really okay. And as I became aware that I it's like I'm okay. I realized my wife, who I knew was deceased, I knew she was gone at the scene of the accident. I realized she was there with me. She was right there with me, and she was okay too, except she was emphatic about, you. Oh, no, no, you can't stay here. You've got to go back. You've got to go back. In fact, she was upset. Even in all that peace and love, she was crying and almost hitting my chest, saying, no, 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 you've got to go back. And that was an interesting moment. I learned a lot about choice in that moment. I learned a lot about the sacredness of a moment, because here I was looking at the woman I loved more than life, and yet I knew I had a son crying in the back seat of that car that would be orphaned if I didn't go back.
Wow.
And it was a profound exchange. And I knew I had to go back, and yet here she was upset. I wanted to stay with her.
Of course.
But in my heart of hearts, I knew I've got to go back. And yet, as soon as I made that choice, as soon as I made the conscious choice, I've got to go back, boom, I found myself wandering through a hospital. Now, this is strange. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
in this bubble of light, this profound goodbye, and now I'm wandering through a hospital. Now, I have no sense of time in any of this. What I later found out is that people arrived at the scene of the accident, one of which was a doctor who had oxygen in a trailer. He was able to do some emergency procedures on me. He saw to Spencer. He was able to take care of the bodies of my deceased loved ones
Wow.
in a professional way. They rushed Spencer and I to a local hospital. Spencer was not badly hurt. He had broken his wrist, and he had banged up his ribs pretty good, but he was okay, physically okay.
Right.
Emotionally, he had never lost consciousness. He had witnessed what he felt was the whole family he killed. He thought he was orphaned. I was not in good shape. Um, at that hospital, they knew they could do nothing for me and immediately life-flighted both of us as to not separate him from me into Salt Lake City.
Mhm.
I knew nothing of that. I knew we'd had the accident. I had this profound goodbye, and then I'm wandering through a hospital. And the hospital was a normal, I mean, patients, doctors, families,
Right.
nurses, I mean, anything from a trauma ER setting, and yet everyone I saw, everyone I encountered, I knew them. I knew them perfectly. I mean, it wasn't that they were strangers to me in this realm, but being out of the body, I had this profound sense of connection to them. I knew everything about them. I knew
Amazing.
their love. I knew their hate. I knew their motivations for everything they'd ever done. I knew their hearts. That's where the title of the book comes from. I knew them in such a connected way. They were me, and I was them, and we were one. We were connected. I knew them, and I had this overwhelming sense of love for them.
Oh,
Absolute unconditional
wow.
love. I mean, all of them, from the heroin addict over here to the saintly grandma over here, and I viewed them as absolutely perfect. I loved them like they were a brother or a sister with no judgment. It was unconditional love, and I knew in that moment. I mean, it was almost as if it was given me. This is how God sees us. This is what I call God sees us, and
Mhm.
this profound sense of connectedness and love, and I was basking in that, and yet still dealing with what had gone on, and I finally came to a man laying on a bed that I didn't feel anything from. I thought, well, this is weird. I feel nothing about him, and so I stepped closer to look, and that's when I realized it was me, or it was my body. I was looking at my
Your own
body.
body.
Yeah, me. I was
Wow.
here. I was fine. I was experiencing all this overwhelming love, and yet there was me. There was the broken down, and I had a profound sense of sadness when I looked and realized and thought, oh my goodness, look how broken, look how devastated my body is. But I knew I had to get back in it.
Mhm.
I knew I had to get back in. Now, it was interesting because as quick as a thought, I mean, even when I made the choice to leave Cameron to come back, as soon as I consciously decided that's what I'm doing, boom, it would happen. And I'm there looking at my body with this profound sense of sadness and trepidation about getting back in. But as soon as I made the conscious thought,
Mhm.
boom, I was back in the body. Now, then all the pain, all the regret, all the guilt, all the horror, all the guilt, everything returned. I was ventilated. They'd put a ventilator in because of my lungs.
Right.
Obviously, my legs were immobile. They'd both been shattered and crushed. My right arm was immobile. They eventually tied down my left arm because I kept trying to grab at all the tubes and everything that were in.
Mhm.
And I learned a whole new meaning of the term "be still." Be still and know. I had no choice. I could not talk. I could not move. And it was a painful, painful process, except there was strange things going on. I seemed to have one foot in this realm, which was
Uh-huh.
absolutely horrific,
Right.
and one foot in the other realm, which was absolutely enlightening. And I continued to have these conversations with my deceased wife. Now, it was odd because she was letting me know personal things. I mean, it might sound trivial, but to her, she wanted her favorite ring to go to her niece, and she wanted her fancy party dresses to go to her sister-in-law, and she wanted to be buried with the baby in her arms. She wanted her and Griffin in the same coffin together. She wanted to be buried near our home so that Spencer could have a place to come and feel close to Mom. I mean, we were having these conversations as if she were
Wow.
here, but she was there. Now, there's an interesting scenario here because the family was in absolute mayhem. I mean, you can
Sure. Of
imagine.
course.
they were telling the family that I probably wasn't going to make it. In
Right.
fact, on several occasions, they said, the odds are not good. The doctors said, we've never seen anyone with your injuries alive, let alone survive them.
Mhm.
Um, we'd lost Tamara Griffin already, and her family was obviously devastated, as was mine. I mean, we were very close, all of us. They had a burial plot down in southern Utah near where they were staying in a little town called Escalante, and they wanted to bury them down there in the family plot. But my family was saying, if we lose Jeff, shouldn't we bury them together? And we don't know that we want him clear down in southern Utah. I mean, the
Right.
families were kind, but you can imagine that the planning and the turmoil and the grief and the bereavement and all that was going on. And they were trying to decide what to do, and yet the interesting thing, and it's almost funny, but there was an insurance problem. They had life-flighted me to a hospital that wasn't in my insurance network,
Oh,
and yet I was in no condition to be transferred. I mean,
sure.
my older brother, who had become a law enforcement officer and a trained EMT, he's like, you cannot transfer this guy. There's no way. And my younger brother, who had become an attorney, and we were very close, he was like going to sue everybody. It's like,
Mhm.
you cannot, you can't, no, you can't do this. The insurance company won out, and the ambulance crew came, and the ambulance crew refused to move me. We will not take the liability. We're not transferring this patient. Well,
Wow.
they brought a life flight crew in to move me 2 miles from LDS Hospital in Salt Lake to University Hospital,
Jeez. All
both
about
in Salt Lake.
insurance. Oh my
The
goodness.
insurance thing. But here's the beautiful thing.
Mhm.
In the process of transferring me, they did take out the ventilator
Okay.
briefly, and although I could not talk well, I was able to eke out what I was experiencing. I'm having these conversations with Tamara. Here's what she wants. And I was able to share with my family what we wanted, what we had decided about the burial, about what was going to take place. I even shared a little song that we had decided to sing at the service, and the family honored it. Now, the point in sharing this is, it's funny, we often think our lives are falling apart. I mean, when in reality, the whole insurance issue was causing things to fall into place. Had that not
Right.
come up, I would have never been able to share what I was experiencing, what I was feeling. And
Amazing how that happens.
yeah, so the
Oh,
family then knew what to do, and they honored it, and I can talk about that later, but it was very critical to have a place where Spencer could come
yes.
and where I could come. But I spent almost 6 months in the hospital. I was in ICU for over 3 months. I had 18 surgeries as they
Wow.
mended me and put me back together. I kept throwing pulmonary embolisms, the blood clots that lodge in your lungs. I had terrible pneumonias. The infections were probably what nearly killed me because of the rupturing of all my intestines and all the open wounds. And I was an absolute mess and really should not be here. But I began to heal. And I learned a lot laying there, being still, dealing with it all. I mean, I couldn't go for a run. I couldn't go punch a bag. I
Couldn't do
literally had to
anything. Just
just be
be.
there.
Wow.
And I asked a lot of why questions. Why me? Why this? Why both of them? Why the leg cut off? Why the loss of my, full use of my right arm? Why? But some shifts began to happen. I had profound dreams. I had things happen, and I began to shift the why questions to the what. What am I learning from this? What am I getting in touch with? What am I realizing? Number one, that I'm not my body, that I was something far more refined than that. And number two, that everything's a choice. I mean, we get to choose. And as I was going through this process, the most profound thing that happened was actually at the end of my hospital stay. Now, oddly enough, they had performed the last surgery. I had moved from ICU. I had gone to the surgical unit. I was through surgical recovery. I was actually in the rehabilitation unit.
Mhm.
I was off of all the heavy drugs. I was simply taking some Tylenol for the shoulder. And I went into this profound, deep sleep one night. And I'm cutting to the chase for time purposes, but I mean, I had been laying on my back so long, and I was finally able to sleep on my side. In fact, the back of my head had been rubbed bald because I'd laid on my
Oh,
back so long.
wow.
But at this point, the injuries in my midsection, and they were still left open. The infection was so bad they were packing them and doing all
Mm.
kinds of things. But I was finally at a state where I could lay on my side. And my younger brother was with me that night, and my brothers. I mean, they nearly lost their jobs to just be with me and just look out for me and hold my hand while I'd fall apart every other day, you know.
Sure.
Um, but I went into this profound deep sleep. And in this sleep, I felt that same sensation, that rise, that moving from this realm to that realm, like walking through a doorway, and it was so familiar. I'm like, oh my goodness, I'm there again. I feel it. I feel home. The only word I can use, it was home. It was familiar. It's like I was
Mm-hmm.
returning. It's like I had been there. I was welcome. I knew it. It was part of me, and I was so joyful. And yet, at this point, it didn't feel like a bubble of light. It felt like a vast expanse. I was home. In fact, I was joyfully running. And having been a Division I athlete, and then knowing I was going to be crippled the rest of my life, but in this realm, I was
You were
running, and I was,
free, right?
yeah, and I was feeling. I mean, I was feeling things in such a physical way. I could feel the ground under my feet and my toes, and everything was super sensory, and I was joyfully moving through, and yet intuitively I knew I'm only here for a moment. I knew that somehow. But as I ran about, just so happy to be home, I saw this corridor off to the left-hand side, and I knew intuitively that I was to go down that corridor. And I did. I started moving down the corridor, and as I moved down it, at the end of the corridor was a crib. And I rushed to the crib, and I looked in the crib, and there was my little Griffin, sleeping as soundly and as peacefully as he had been when I looked in the rearview mirror just before the
Wow.
hour. And I swept him up in my arms, and I held him, and I could feel him. I was blown away at how I could feel. I could feel he was solid against my chest. I could feel the warmth of his body. I could feel his breaths. I could feel him breathing on my neck. I could feel his soft head on my cheek, and I just
Wow.
held him, weeping, knowing he's okay.
What a
and
gift.
and
Oh my
yeah,
gosh.
and marveling that, oh my gosh, how am I feeling at such a level? I mean, that was real. I mean, since that, this life is the crazy, foggy, misty dream. That
It's
was real.
reality.
In fact, it was almost like I could feel the light and the life in every cell of his being, and it began to meld. I felt the life and the light in my own being, and we began to just meld together, and I realized the love that I had for this little boy. And I was just so thankful. In fact, I was weeping, just holding him and loving him. And as I did that, I felt a presence come up behind me. And what I felt was so powerful and so wise and so all-knowing. And in fact, it overwhelmed me. I
Mm-hmm.
did not dare turn around. It actually startled me. But then I began to feel how absolutely loving and personal it was. And as I stood there holding my little boy weeping, I felt these divine, loving arms wrap around me. And then this download came. I mean, as I was embraced, it's almost like we all melded into one, and then everything went away, and I was part of all of it, all there is.
Wow.
And I saw my life. I saw the divorce. I saw my insecurities. I saw what I had done to cover it up. I saw what I thought were mistakes. And yet, in those loving arms, I realized there was no mistakes. I was only here to learn. It was beautiful. I saw the things I had done wrong, and I knew they were wrong, and I did them anyway.
Yeah,
I mean,
yes, I know how those things go.
yeah, and in this realm, all I felt was, look how much we love you. Look how much we support you. Look how we honor your life, your choice. And as I stood there holding my perfect little child, I realized in those arms that I was perfect. And that's been difficult for me to say, but I knew I was perfect. In fact, I knew that I was divine. I knew that I was part of that. And, if I am, I promise you, everyone is.
Just
We
the
all are.
way we are and just the way we aren't.
Just the way we are. There was nothing to be. In fact, I had grown up in a good Christian home, and
Hmm.
I was afraid of God, and I thought he'll judge me, and I'm probably in trouble based on the way things have gone. And I thought also that I had something to prove, but he's proving me. In fact, I used to think that God did these things to us. He did this to me to see how I would act, to see if I would pass the test, to see if he could prove me worthy or of worth
Right.
in some way. And yet my experience trumped all of it. There was no judgment, absolutely no judgment. The love I felt was absolutely unconditional. In fact, I realized as I watched my life that I was the only one placing judgment. They didn't. They simply loved me perfectly and honored me. And as I watched this all play out, I realized a very profound thing, and that is I had created it. I had created my life. They were simply allowing it. I had created the life that would teach me exactly what I came here to learn. And the profound events, good, bad, joyful, sweet, painful, were all a part of what my higher consciousness had created for me and was supported by the entire universe. In
Wow.
fact, I felt as if it was that. It's like the entire universe is supporting my little life
Hmm.
so that I could learn what I came here to learn. And I also learned a lot about our origins. I mean, growing up in a Christian home, I'd read biblical verses. I had heard this great master, Jesus, say interesting things like be ye therefore perfect, which used to scare me. And yet
Hmm.
I realized he wasn't saying become it. He was saying embrace who you are.
Right.
Consider the lilies of the field, how they grow. They neither spin nor toil, and yet Solomon in all of his glory is not arrayed like one of them. These words that had been in my home all of a sudden became real and had a much deeper, profound meaning. In fact, I recall reading in the Bible when he would say, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. But what he was telling us is of our divinity. Don't you know that we are part of that? I am that I am. And this divinity just flowed through me thinking, wow, I'm really part of that. And I also learned about choice. In fact, and very few words were spoken. This was all just flowing through energy and knowledge to me. But as I stood there in those loving arms, I was given a choice. And I was told, you can feel like a victim. You can
Hmm.
feel picked on. You can feel put upon. You can feel as if I ripped your family away from you.
Right.
Or in this divine moment, you can make a choice. And this was the choice. I will allow you to give your son to me. And therefore, no one will ever take him again. You will exercise your will, your free will and choice in giving him to me so that you don't feel like he's taken. And that was a gift. It was a beautiful gift. And in that perfect, perfect space, I was actually able to kiss my little boy and give him back.
Wow, Jeff.
And um, and then I